Hello and welcome to the Ultimate Pyramid. Today we're discussing a structure for how to approach the way we use ultimates in Overwatch. So let's get started. First we have spammers. Spammers should use their ultimates liberally, and it should be fairly easy to find opportunities to do so. They can be used at any time during a fight, beginning, middle, end, even in between fights. Now there's two things you want to look out for when it comes to spammers. The first is how often you get these ultimates. If you're getting them once every, let's say, third team fight, that's a big red flag. That means that you're either not proficient enough on that character, or the enemy team is countering you, and you should consider switching. You should be aiming for getting these ultimates every other team fight. That's a pretty good goal. As time goes on, you'll improve, and you'll get closer to that once every team fight range. The second thing you want to look out for is how long you hold on to these ultimates once you've got them. If you're holding on to them for 2+ minutes at a time, another red flag. You want to aim for that 0 to 1 minute range. There are opportunities there, you just have to look for them. And sometimes you'll have to create them, you'll have to work a little bit to create them, but they are there. Now there are exceptions. Let's say you are Tracer with Pulse Bomb and you're waiting to combo it with Graviton. Sure, you might hold on to that Pulse Bomb longer than normal, and that's totally valid. But in general, you want to control the tempo of the game with these spammers. You want to be aggressive, and ideally you'll be creating pressure for your team to then leverage. Great. Let's move on to openers. Now, at this point in the video, you might be saying, hey, some of those spamming ultimates, they look like pretty good opening ultimates too. To which I would say, yes, astute observation. You'll notice that with this video, we're going to follow this structure where at any level on the pyramid, those principles can be applied upwards. We'll get into that at the end of the video, so just hold on to that. Hold on to that thought. Okay, openers. Think of the team fight on a timeline. 0 to 3 seconds. That's where these ultimates really excel. They're really good at forcing your opponents into bad positions, forcing ultimate trades, or just sometimes straight up getting kills, right? Great. And you can sometimes combo these a little bit, like Nano Visor, Nano Blade, etc. Please don't combo Graviton Surge and Tac Visor. Please do not do that. The rest of these, they all have pretty decent synergy amongst themselves. If you do plan on opening up with two ultimates, which is valid, just don't do it all the time. It's one of those things that you can't just always rely on that. Great. Let's move on to closers. Okay. The first rule with closers is that if the opening ultimate was really good, like you got either amazing positioning advantage, you got some kills, don't be afraid to hold on to these closers. And on that note, closers, in my opinion, are probably one of the hardest ultimates to master. They are notoriously difficult to use, and we'll kind of go through why that is now. First off, you need to be so careful with using these ultimates, and it's typically because these ultimates tend to leave you pretty vulnerable. D.Va gets desuited, Pharah can't move, Reinhardt has to put his shield down, Reaper has to be in the middle of his opponents, and similar to Pharah, McCree can't move very much while he's high nooning. Now, think of the team fight on a timeline. As the fight's progressing, it's reaching a climax. And with these ultimates, you kind of want to be that climax to where as soon as you unleash these ultimates, you'll either finish the fight right away or very soon after. Example, let's say you're in a Reinhardt v Reinhardt situation. Your team is handedly winning that shield battle. You recognize that. You start posturing. You get more aggressive. You want to get as many opponents into your Earthshatter as possible. Once that shield breaks, boom, you unleash Earthshatter. Your team cleans up. Game over. That fight is over. But please don't make the mistake of using closers as openers. We see this mistake all the time, even at the professional level. Sometimes we'll see a classic example is D.Va using her ultimate as an opener, and sometimes it works out and sometimes it works okay, but in my opinion, almost always that ultimate would have been better served as a closer, mid-fight, towards the end of the fight. It's almost always better that way. Now, there are exceptions. Just last week, I was watching the scrim where on Dorado Streets phase, D.Va was unleashing her ultimate, and then a friendly Lucio came around bank and booped an Ana into that bomb. It was awesome. Very creative way to kind of bend these rules, right? Because this is a structure that we want to follow, but of course, Overwatch is such a dynamic game that we need to be creative and and bend and break these guidelines. But if we use this as our base and branch out from there, I promise you that that's a really good and smart way to approach these ultimates. Okay, another exception. Let's say you are Reinhardt and you're kind of behind a corner and you get a sneaky earth shatter on unsuspecting opponents. Cool. That's another way to kind of bend and break these rules. In that scenario, you are kind of opening and closing the fight immediately in one swing, and then your team just cleans up. So of course there are exceptions, and I don't want you to kind of get pigeonholed into this structure. I want you to base your understanding here and then branch out creatively from there. Great. Now let's move on to turners. Turners can turn fights. That is basically what they do. You want to use them at key moments in the fight, kind of in a more reactive manner. If you use them too early, it's very often that your opponents can then disengage and punish you. So let's start with Molten Core. Molten Core is an excellent tool for teams who overextend. So classic example, I see this all the time. Let's say you're on defense with Torbjorn, and your team, the opponent team got to pick onto your team. So you're down a man. It's 5v6. You're on defense. The enemy team, they'll be like, oh, we got to pick. Let's go, 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 go. They rush onto the point, and then you turn on Molten Core, and then they realize, oh crud, like we actually engaged a little bit too sloppily, and now we're kind of bunched up, and we have this 1,000 or however much health that turret has, unleashing hell on us, and that's a hard fight for them to take, right? A smarter team is going to, once they get a pick, they're going to be more careful, especially against teams who are running some of these turners, specifically Torbjorn. If you engage too quickly and too sloppily on a Torbjorn, he will punish you. When you get, just as a small tangent, when you're a team and you get a pick, you don't always have to just rush in. Wait for some heals, wait for some critical cooldowns to come back, get the desired positioning you want, and then pull the trigger. Don't just, immediately, as soon as you get a pick, you just like jump right in, right? Please avoid doing that. Anyways, Torbjorn is an excellent tool for punishing those kinds of plays. Those mistakes. Winston. I see Winston's makes a mistake where sometimes when they have their ultimate, they start playing really aggressive, and it's really unnecessary as Winston, because the monkey, his ultimate form doesn't give him a whole lot of extra oomph, if you will. Winston is already very terrifying in his regular form with the bubble, Tesla cannon, etc. So in my mind, one of the best parts about Primal Rage is the fact that you get the 1k heal, right? Again, it's kind of a turning tool. The enemy team thinks they're safe. They might greed and chase for a kill onto a Winston. He kind of gets away closer to his team, and then when the enemy's kind of overcommitted, he turns on Primal Rage, and then boom, now the fight's turned. So I see a lot of Winstons when, again, they get over aggressive when they have Primal Rage. It's kind of a false sense of security. They get in and they think they're doing all this work, but then they realize that they'll lose the fight sometimes. They'll be like, hey, what the heck? I was doing so well. And it's because this tool is better his Primal Rage is better as a baiting tool, where you give your opponents a false sense of security and then you turn it on, as opposed to, like a offensive tool. It's not so much an offensive tool. Okay. Tank configuration with Bastion, very similar principles. Don't burn it too early. Same as Winston and Torbjorn. Let the opponents kind of come closer, let them overcommit, then you switch it on. Because similar to Winston, Bastion is already very threatening in his normal form. Cool. Let's move on to the support ultimates. Sound barrier. This one I see used incorrectly all the time, and again, even at the pro level. It's okay sometimes to use it as an opener, but please do not abuse that. Again, even at the professional level, we'll see teams use this all the time at the beginning of a fight. And again, there are exceptions, but in general, it's much better served as a reactionary tool against Dragon Blades, Tac Visors, things like that. In my mind, if you're using, Sound Barrier as like an engaging tool, that's a red flag. Your team ideally should be spaced out, ideally having multiple angles of attack. And if you're using it as an engaging tool, that to me just means that you're not thinking about how to engage in a tactical manner. You're just kind of just bashing your head against the wall, going in and hoping for the best. So again, that's a red flag in my opinion, and it's just used too much as a crutch from what I can see. Transcendence typically doesn't have that problem, but similar to Sound Barrier, it should be used reactively. Dragon Blades, Tac Visors, etc. Resurrect. I don't need to say much about Resurrect. I'm sure everyone is very well acquainted with how Resurrect works. It's probably one of the best turning abilities in the game. That being said, there are exceptions. Tempo reses, obviously, right? Like that's a really good example of when you might want to use a res in a non-turning fashion. Cool. Symmetra. Symmetra, don't have too much to say about her. Her ultimate functions very differently from everyone else in the sense that it's indefinite, right? The one thing I do want to say is that she can turn fights with teleporter on defense on point A. You know, if she places that teleporter in the right spot, you know, not too close, not too far from the point, and also as the fight's starting to, you know, progress towards that climax, hopefully, you know, quite a bit before it's going to reach that climax. If she can get that teleporter down, you know, sometimes it's too hard for the opponents to disengage from that fight and go kill that teleporter. And then as teammates are dying, they're going to start coming in quicker than the opponents, right? So teleporter is a very good turning tool, which I'm sure a lot of people have seen that in solo queue. It's not exactly a new thing. Okay, cool. Now let's move on to the most important part of this video. So like we said earlier, you know, the example of, you know, certain spamming abilities can be used as openers. Basically, at any level of this pyramid, so, you know, spammers can use all of their ultimates for openers, closers, and turners, right? And, you know, openers can then use all of their ultimates for closing and turners and so on. But the key point I want to make here is that this pyramid does not function downwards. If you're using your turning and closing ultimates, you know, in a spammy way or to open up fights, that's probably the wrong usage of that ultimate. And we see that kind of stuff all the time. Now, again, I don't want to pigeonhole people into this structure. There are times and exceptions where you can break these rules, but you need a compelling reason to do so. So really think about the situation and say, you know, is this the best use of my ultimate? You know, example, like I said earlier with that Diva ultimate with the Lucio boop. That's a really creative, cool play. I want to see more of that kind of stuff. And I hope that we do. But in general, kind of follow these rules and really think about this pyramid and kind of consider how you can use your ultimates to the maximum potential. Cool. Last two things I want to say are about the scoreboard and the kill feed. They are your friends, especially for ultimates. They're going to make sure that you don't waste your ultimate. So for instance, with the kill feed, if you see your team is handedly winning the fight or handedly losing, you probably want to save that ultimate. With the scoreboard, you can make sure that, again, with the Tracer and Zarya combo example, if you see that your Zarya has Graviton, you might want to hold on to that and wait for that opportunity. You know, and you can do that even without comms. You can just kind of see it there, and, you know, maybe she's in chat, she's showing you the percentage. That way you can coordinate accordingly and get into position, be ready to go. Cool. I hope this video was helpful, and if you liked it, please subscribe. Thank you.